Hey everyone, welcome to the third in a series of 5 webinars discussing Mindful Life, Mindful Work's new scalable mindfulness coaching program called MindDev. We're sort of coining the methodology as mindfulness-informed coaching. So we're excited to have everyone here and to have a conversation. And hopefully we're going to be joined by Amy Rice, Mindful Life, Mindful Works Director of Coaching. I know she has a busy day today, but hopefully she'll be able to drop in. And this is just a chance for us to talk about the program. And today we're focusing on 3 key areas: sustainability, purpose, and decision making, all really central, and how we have found in our experience that mindfulness informed coaching, or having coaching that comes through a lens, and having a coach that has some capacity or relationship to mindfulness, to be really central and important in this regard. So let's start. Let's begin. And so let's just talk generally, for those that weren't in the first couple of webinars, about what MindDev is, and what the vision is, and what we're designing at Mindful Life, Mindful Work. So traditionally, over the last 15 or so years, Mindful Life, Mindful Work has done coaching with companies, coaching, consulting, training, and assessments. But we never really had what we considered to be sort of this like far reach, scalable cultural change piece that could really go into a large company or a large department of a very large company and start to modify and support large numbers of leaders, whether those be middle managers, VPs, top-level managers, wherever people fell in the spectrum, and of course individual contributors as well. And so now with MindDev, we feel like we're growing that thing. And the long-range vision is to be able to bring in 50 to even 1,000 coaches into a very large company, similar to what BetterUp has done, and for those that know that platform. But to have all the coaches sort of unified around mindful approaches, and of course we have a methodology that will steer the coaches that we bring into companies, and a platform, so a place to track sessions, hours, these sorts of things. And so, for many of you, maybe it's preaching to the choir and are on board, but we see a mindful approach and a self-aware approach as really central to cultivating competencies, capacities, but also creating human workplace environments that are really supportive. We see this big attrition happening post-COVID, but really the seeds were always there, as people were discontent with the lack of meaning and purpose. They just weren't willing indefinitely to work like dogs as hard as they could to make just a paycheck. And again, paycheck's a great thing to make. But why not make a paycheck and feel good and supported and cared for and rejuvenated? And so we see at Mindful Life, Mindful Work, and this has been a big part of our work over the years, that when we connect the human piece, the life piece, to the work piece, then we don't have to shift gears so profoundly to be effective in our professional lives. And so that's the effort. And so MindDev is the next logical step as we see it in that direction. And so we have a chat open. So if anybody has any questions, of course, chime in, and we're happy to address those. Let's start with purpose, actually, the second item that we listed. What does it mean to live with meaning and purpose? What does it mean to be in a system of people that are living with meaning and purpose, and that is infused in the way that they work in the world? Many of us maybe have never known that at our company. Maybe it always has felt like, oh, I'm just going there and I sort of have to be this sort of person to get my paycheck and to do my job as well as I can. And when I leave, then I can really be myself. And we just don't think that that's good enough. We think you should be able to be your full self at work. And we feel like that's the greater value that companies are missing out on by not supporting team members in being their full selves, because there's value that walks out the door then and then offers it somewhere else, either at another company or in our personal lives. Of course, you have to be professional when you're at work. You can't just be whoever you are in your personal life, but you shouldn't have to table the elements of yourself or the ways that you are in the world. And so this purpose piece, this meaning piece, and I think it's important that employees and individual contributors and people throughout the employee journey in any given company feel like what they care about as a human being is actually aligned in some way with the company that they're working for. Otherwise, it's a heavy lift. It's a lot of shifting, or it's a huge compromise to go work for a company that we don't actually care about, that we don't actually connect with on some level. And that responsibility falls both on the individuals, but also on the company. And so aligning on a purpose. And I think every company ultimately exists to make the world better for other people, or hopefully it does. But if we can't connect our personal vision, purpose, and meaning to that of the company, it's going to be a long, boring day, because some of the stuff we have to do at our job isn't going to be fun. It isn't going to feel perfect. And so what happens in those moments? Do we just say, oh, this day is going to be crap, and the moment I get out of here, I get to take a deep breath? Well, a lot of people feel like that. But if we can connect, and if companies can do their part to help team members feel supported, cared for, and see how their vision to make the world a better place at least has some overlap with the company, then all of a sudden days aren't drudgery. They're not just waiting. We're not just waiting for them to finally end so we can go be ourselves. We feel like we can be ourselves in those moments. And so that's part of what we want to talk about, and what we want to support with MindDev is how do companies get to that place with their team members so people don't have to feel like that, so they can actually be a little bit excited to come to work because they know they're going to support both what they care about, but it dovetails or at least connects in some way with what the company care about. And of course, companies exist to make money, but how they make money matters. It matters both in the world, like are they helping support people and lift them up, or is it destructive in some sense? And that ultimately matters even more to the employees, because if the employees feel well or good about what they're doing, they're going to do it better. And so MindDev is opening up that conversation both within individuals, because individual coaching is the crux of MindDev. But then it also starts to affect, well, what is the languaging, or what are the protocols that our company does to make sure that we're aligned, that at least we feel aligned. We don't always have to see eye to eye on everything, but are we aligned on the important stuff? Because if we're not, team members are at the wrong company, or conversations need to happen so they feel like they're at the right company. And so it's about finding rightness of fit ultimately. Nobody's to blame when it's not a rightness of fit. Ultimately, it's like, oh, find the place that feels aligned and right to us. So that's sort of the deeper purpose and the deeper thrust of why we saw MindDev as being really important and central and needed in the world. Is how do companies move at scale in that direction? Maybe we've all had personal experiences where we've done some personal growth work, or we've had small groups of friends, or even groups of colleagues and professional folks that we've sort of felt like we were growing with. But how much more so when we feel at scale that that's happening? So that purpose piece is really central. And again, anyone wants to put anything in the chat to either any question, any follow-up question, happy to sort of talk that through. This is part of the intention of these webinars. The other piece, the second piece I want to touch on is sustainability. What does it actually mean to be sustainable? I mean, many folks, they hear the word sustainability and they automatically think of environment and things like recycling programs and things like this. And that's a good start. what is a recycling program? Is it just put your plastics in this thing and then they reuse some of the stuff and then more plastics happen? Well, partly yes, but if you look at the recycling, usually the recycling image is like circular, right? It's cycled. And what that means is, just like the cycles of nature, is the reason nature is cyclical is because it's infinitely, unless disrupted, self-sustaining. If we don't get in the way, the forest regenerates. If we don't cut stuff down and we don't, overuse resources, it comes back every time, over and over, for thousands or hundreds of thousands of years potentially. And so ultimately, we want to design practices. And again, it's theoretical on a certain level, but that are feasibly that we could do forever. And that might sound like a really grand aspiration. But if you feel like you're always sort of peaks and valleys, and a lot of us are in peaks and valleys at work, right? Sales cycles, quarterly stuff, seasonal stuff, annual stuff, it's all peaks and valleys to a certain extent. But if we take a bigger look at it, it actually is sustainable. But we also want it to feel sustainable on a micro scale. We want to be able to go to work and not feel like we have to crash at the end of the day, or feel like, oh, this is just a big push, and if I get through this big push, I can rest on the weekend. Or, there's going to be some of that. But if that's our whole life cycle, if that's our whole existence professionally, we're going to burn out. And that's why you're seeing a lot of burnout, is because people are sort of like holding on for dear life, trying to get to the end of some deadline or something, and hoping that there's going to be a break. And often there's not, because the next thing is just waiting there at the end. So, I guess I didn't get the break now. Well, maybe I'll get the break at the end of this thing. And maybe it comes and maybe it doesn't. So how do we build in sustainability on a personal level so we can function and feel human in our work? And then how can we build in sustainability, not only like best care practices for a company as it relates to the environment? Of course, those are important things too, not dumping chemicals and things like this. But like, how does a company get to a place where it's healthy, where it knows what health is and isn't always functioning on a deficit or a depletion, either fiscally or energetically or time-wise? How does a company get to a place where it feels a little bit spacious? It feels good. Many companies have never felt like that. Many people have never worked in a company that felt like that. And we think that's a huge miss. Like, how do you get to a place where sustainability actually exists, where there's little gaps between meetings so people can breathe and check their messages, or even do a tiny piece of work before the next meeting, or use the restroom, not just race to the next meeting and always late? How do you build that in? And so MindDev is designed to coach people, teams, departments to have these conversations. How do we want to be as a company or a department or a team? What are we going to do to make sure that we feel like that? Are there practices, protocols? If not, what sorts of hard conversations are we willing to have? And then what are we going to do when it's not working? What are we going to do when, it feels terrible? Or one individual feels terrible. We're just going to say, oh, they're just falling behind, they can't cut it. Or are we going to say, oh, there's actually sort of a group think or a group moray around, oh, this is how you bring that person back into it. This is how you support that person. This is how you support that department that's having a hard time. Instead of blaming them or saying, oh, you guys aren't keeping up, because isn't the ultimate goal to have everybody doing their best and have them be doing really well? Well, what actually helps people do really well? And so through MindDev, we really see like sustainability comes from these more caring relational ways of being. And that comes through awareness. That comes through our own personal awareness, but it also comes through systemic awareness. How are we doing this together? Is it working? Is it not working? And being really honest when it's not working. Oh, it's not just that department. That department might just be the indicator that something is off. But that potential may be in other departments. And just because one department is showing us what we haven't developed or haven't designed to support that department, certainly that's not an isolated incident in a large company. We don't want to, as a company, we ultimately don't want to rest on just some top performers to make the unhealthy systemic things go away. Because what happens when those top performers leave? Because they don't want to be in an unhealthy environment. And so, again, connecting to purpose, building out systems that are truly sustainable, both for the individual to feel supported, but then also for the system at scale to feel supported and supportive, are really essential. Again, the chat is open if anybody wants to comment or has any thoughts on these matters that they want to, interject. So the third area that we wanted to address today is decision making. Because ultimately, whether we're a leader or a team member embedded in a culture, how we make decisions needs to consider multiple perspectives, has to consider the system, has to include systemic thinking. And one of the great things around mindfulness and mindful approaches is that it helps us engage in what I like to call multi-perspectival appreciation. You can call that empathy. You can call that knowing that other people think different things, knowing that our perspective is subjective. But when we realize that, then all of a sudden things start to open up with the way that we make decisions, because there's a consideration beyond sort of the myopic, how does this affect just me or my day? How does this affect the 3 team members I'm closest to? How does this affect the department of 25 people? How does this affect the division of 1,000 people? How does this affect the company if it's a large company of 35,000 people? It's sort of the think globally, act locally ideology, but within a company. And I think it's just so important. And so our capacity to start to expand our perspective informs those decisions. Now, of course, if we're a VP or in the C-suite or we're higher level, we need to be considering those. But if those competencies aren't there, and we tend to sort of slip into details rather than process or rather than more expansive considerations, it can be really problematic. So when we've coached senior leaders in the past, a lot of times it is around this, like, have you considered this? I mean, sometimes just a question around, did you consider what this is going to mean to the marketing department? And if they're nowhere near the marketing department because they're in a different department, they may have not. And everything affects everything. Again, a company, an organization by definition is organized, right? That's why it's called an organization. And so we could even say it's an organism. Every part affects every other part to some degree, sometimes very subtly, sometimes hardly noticeably. But it's important to honor sort of that overly organic and interconnectedness of a company. And so when we take a mindful approach or a mindfulness-informed coaching approach, we honor that. We say, my decisions don't happen in isolation. They aren't just going to affect my direct reports. They're going to affect everyone they interact with, and ultimately the entire company. And so we might immediately start to see how this relates to purpose and sustainability. if I want to create a sustainable process here, I want this thing to happen, but it's going to affect this other department and might jeopardize their sustainability or their ability to continue to like maintain a high level of production or output or whatever their function is. That's going to affect how I did make this decision. Or, if this decision isn't aligned with the purpose we all agreed on, and again, that purpose might be something very specific and business related, but it also might be thematic. It might be, we decided that we're going to make caring decisions towards the planet or towards making sure that everybody at the company feels like they're included and belong, regardless of their background, whether that's ethnic or something else. Then that should inform decisions if that's an agreed upon moray. And hopefully it is, because it's a pretty important one. But if it's not, well, then everybody should know that it's not, and then employees can make a mature decision around whether they want to be in that atmosphere or not. And so, again, sustainability, purpose, and decision making are really central to how we approach any given moment, either mindfully or less mindfully. And again, there's no judgment around where we are on the spectrum, but that intention, that overarching intention to do our best to be mindful and to cultivate self-awareness, that intention alone already changes things. Because we've sort of leaned ourselves towards growing in that way. And again, whole companies can lean themselves in that direction. And that's ultimately the vision of MindDev, is how do we lean ourselves towards success? And especially with the more educated and the more employees in general recognize that they want to feel good at their job. They don't want to just do a good job. They want to do a good job and feel good about doing a good job, because they feel seen and respected and cared for as people. And so amazing things happen when sometimes in my individual coaching work, sometimes just saying to a senior leader, we're going to help finance your individual coaching, already sends the message that we care about you as a person and as a professional. Sometimes the coaching, whatever happens in the coaching, is just bonus. That message already. So when companies invest in some sort of program to support their team members, that gesture is already a big step in the resolution, in sort of the response that hopefully the companies want. And then how the work sorts out, of course, is really important, mostly process-based more than content-based in our experience. But yeah, those are things that I think are almost non-negotiables at this stage and will continue to be so. And in our experience, companies tend to be pretty slow adopters, and that's natural. Is budget there? Do you want to put budget towards a pivot or an opening in a new direction? But if you want to retain top talent and you want to retain just general talent, and you just want to retain people, people now know that there are companies that see them as people, and more and more. I mean, this is the direction of, right? Like, nobody likes to feel like a cog in the wheel. So I don't see any questions. I don't want to just go on indefinitely. I want to respect your time. It's always nice sometimes when things end early and you get a little bit of your time back. Again, the name of the program is MindDev Coaching Program, and it features what we're calling mindfulness-informed coaching. The name of the company is Mindful Life, Mindful Work, Inc. And my name is Jonathan Reynolds. I'm the CEO of that company. And yeah, reach out. Find us at www.mindfullifemindfulwork.com. We're all over social media, pretty much every platform. Reach out. And again, every conversation starts with a beginning. with a reach out. So if you're even curious and you know you don't want the program, but you'd love to learn more or talk or share a little bit about what's going on for you at your company, regardless of what level at your company you are, yeah, don't be a stranger. We are not a hard sell company. We're interested in relationships. We're interested in embodying the mores and the practices and the protocols that MindDev conveys. We found it really useful in our own company, and we want to share that. So have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll see you out there.